Something must have caught Private Riddle's eye from where he stood in the turret of the lead combat crawler. Either that, or Private Sampson was extraordinarily observant, given how low to the ground he was in the driver's compartment. The 8-wheeled vehicle slowed, dust billowing out from beneath its stiffened weave tires, and Riddle pivoted the combat laser toward the rise just off to the north. Some of the gray-green spatulate local growth clung to the rocky promontory, but like most of this stretch of empty country outside of Berenice Konu, the hill was mostly barren. Still, Lieutenant Ulrich Bannon had seen enough over the last 200 days on Zhogalgan to know that the otuchans didn't need a lot of vegetation to hide. The ground might look relatively flat, at least on this side of the Kepterilgan Mountains, but looks were deceiving. The Saurian bastards were very good at flattening themselves into the smallest cracks and crevices in the rocks and the dusty ground, waiting motionless for hours or days until their quarry walked into their sights. Bannon was seated in the right-hand seat of his own crawler, 2 vehicles back from the lead, though the column was staggered so that he could see the movement of the point vehicle clearly through the armored vision slots in the front glacis. He touched the transmit control on his gauntlet. "Vehicle 1, status." Before Sergeant Munoz, in the vehicle commander's seat of the lead, could answer, a rocket slammed out from the hill and struck the front glacis. The driver had already started to back up, fortunately. Otherwise, it would have hit the hull square and probably blown the vehicle to bits. "Spread out! Skirmish line!" Bannon was already prying himself out of his seat. If the phalanx had been in hard suits, it would have been much harder to get out of the armored crawler. Corvanites didn't like to sacrifice mobility for protection if they could help it, though. "All riflemen on the ground. Gunners, provide covering fire. First squad, set up a base of fire. Second and third on me. We'll sweep out to the flank." He switched channels with the tap of a key. "Operations 7-3, this is 1023. Otuchan ambush at Sector 7358, requesting immediate support." He didn't need to push the rest of the men out of the back of the infantry fighting vehicle. They'd drilled this hundreds of times, even before coming to Zhogalgan and facing more than a few Otuchan ambushes out on the desolate badlands that surrounded the human settlements. The Corvanite warriors spilled off the ramp, sprinting to either side of the vehicle before throwing themselves prone on the dusty ground, searching for targets. Bannon stayed on his feet for the moment, bracing his CR-196 rifle against the crawler's hull, scanning the hill over the sights. The lead vehicle had backed up fast, nearly reaching his own Chariot 72. That had, apparently, taken them out of the rocket launcher's kill zone, and now they were starting to see movement on the hillside. Bannon touched the switch that increased the sight's magnification and picked out one of the otuchans crawling underneath one of those spatulate bushes. The plants didn't seem to have discrete leaves. Their branches just flattened out into the closest analog to them. They didn't provide enough concealment for the broad, bow-legged reptilian alien, either. His finger tightened on the trigger, and the 6mm rifle bucked against his shoulder with a harsh crack. The otuchan jerked, but instead of retreating or taking cover, it pivoted its boxy rifle toward the Corvanite vehicles and fired. The muzzle blast kicked up dust in front of the otuchan fighter, and a heavy slug slammed into the armored flank of the Chariot 72. But then Bannon leaned into his own weapon and shot the otuchan 4 more times, as fast as he could reset the trigger. Across the open ground, gunfire thundered and combat lasers hissed, that hiss turning into a roaring crackle as the directed energy blasted scorched trenches in the dirt and turned what little moisture was in the ground to steam. The answering fire was no less intense, though the otuchans never seemed to attempt to gain fire superiority. They hoarded every round, made every shot count as best they could. One of 3rd Squad took a bullet through the helmet as he sprinted for cover in a fold of the ground off the flank near the foot of the hill, shattering his visor and blowing a spray of red out through the back of his neck. He tumbled limply to the dust, even as the gunner in the nearest crawler turned his laser on the hill and set 2 more of the bushes on fire as he raked the otuchan's position with millions of joules of concentrated energy.